Dear colleagues, dear colleagues, dear colleagues, could I please you all ask you to have a seat, please? So good morning, dear colleagues, good morning. The sitting is open. This morning's item on the agenda is the statement by the President of the European Commission on the State of the Union. Dear President, we are all very much looking forward to it. I will start by giving you the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. President, honourable members. I think many are the people who feel their lives have been on pause while the world has been on fast forward, because the speed of the events and the enormity of the challenges are sometimes very difficult to grasp. And this has also been a time of soul-searching. People are re-evaluating their own lives. We are having wider debates on shared vaccines and shared values. But as I look back on this past year, and if I look at the State of the Union today, I see a strong soul in everything what we do. It was Robert Schuman who said, "Europe needs a soul, an ideal, and the political will to serve this ideal." And Europe has brought those words to life in the last 12 months. In the biggest global health crisis for a century, we chose to go it together so that every part of Europe had access to the life-saving vaccines. In the deepest global economic crisis for decades, we chose to go it together with Next Generation EU. And in the gravest planetary crisis of all time, again, we chose to go it together with the European Green Deal. We did it together as a Commission, and I thank from the bottom of my heart my outstanding College of Commissioners for the enormous support during that time. We did it together as a Parliament with 27 member states, as one Europe, and I think we can be proud of it. But Corona times are not over, and there is still much grief in our society as the pandemic lingers. There are hearts we can never mend, life stories we can never finish, and time we can never give back to our young. We face new and enduring challenges in a world recovering and fracturing unevenly. So there is no question, the next year will be another test of character. But I believe it is when you are tested that your spirit, your soul truly shines through. And as I look across our union, I know that Europe will pass the test. And what gives me that confidence is the inspiration we can draw from Europe's young people. Because our youth put meaning into empathy and solidarity. They believe we have a responsibility towards the planet. And while they are anxious about the future, they are determined to make it better. Our union will be stronger if it is more like our next generation, reflective, determined, and caring, grounded in values and bold in action. And this spirit will be more important than ever over the next 12 months. This is the message in the letter of intent I sent this morning to President Sassoli and Prime Minister Janša to outline our priorities for the year ahead. Honourable members, a year is long at the time of pandemics. When I stood here in front of you 12 months ago, I did not know when or even if we could have a safe and effective vaccine against COVID-19. But today, against all critics, Europe is among the world leaders. More than 70% of our adult population is fully vaccinated. We were the only ones to share half of our vaccine production with the rest of the world. We delivered more than 700 million doses of vaccines to the Europeans. We delivered Indeed, we delivered also more than 700 million to the rest of the world, to more than 130 countries. And we are the only region in the world to achieve that. Honourable members, a pandemic is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We followed the science, we delivered to Europe, we delivered to the rest of the world. We did it the right way because we did it the European way, and I think it worked. But while we have every reason to be confident, we have no reason to be complacent. Our first and most urgent priority is to speed up global vaccination. With less than 1% of global doses administered in low-income countries, the scale of injustice and the level of urgency is obvious. This is one of the great geopolitical issues in our time. Team Europe is investing €1 billion to ramp up mRNA production capacity with Africa. We have already committed to share 250 million doses of vaccine. I can announce today that the Commission will add a new donation of another 200 million doses until the middle of next year. This is an investment in solidarity, and it is an investment also in global health. The second priority is to continue our efforts here in Europe. We see worrisome divergences between member states what vaccination rates are concerned. So we need to keep up the momentum. And Europe is ready. We have 1.8 billion additional doses secured. This is enough for us and our neighbourhood when booster shots are needed. So let's do everything possible that this does not turn into a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And my third point, the final priority, is to strengthen our pandemic preparedness. Last year, I said it was time to build a European health union. Today, we are delivering. With our proposal, we get the HERA authority up and running. This will be a huge asset to deal with future health threats earlier and better. We have the innovation and scientific capacity, we have the private sector knowledge, we have competent national authorities, and now we have to bring all that together, including massive funding. So I am proposing a new health preparedness and resilience mission for the whole of the European Union, and it should be backed up by Team Europe investment of 50 billion by 2027 to make sure that no virus will ever turn a local epidemic again in a global pandemic. There is no better return on investment than that. Honourable members, the work on the European Health Union is a big step forward. And I want to thank this House for your support. We have shown that when we act together, we can act fast. Take the EU digital certificate. Today, more than 400 million certificates have been generated across Europe. 42 countries in 4 different continents are plugged in. We proposed it in March. You pushed hard. You helped enormously. 3 months later only, it was up and running. So while the rest of the world was talking about, Europe just did it. And we did a lot of things right. We moved fast to create SURE. This supported over 31 million workers and 2.5 million companies across Europe. We learned the lessons from the past when we were too divided and too delayed. And the difference is stark. Last time, it took us 8 years for the Eurozone GDP to get back to pre-crisis level. This time, we expect 19 countries to be at pre-pandemic levels this year, with the rest following next. Growth in the euro area outpaced both the US and China in the last quarter. But this is only the beginning, and the lessons from the financial crisis could serve as a cautionary tale. At that time, Europe declared victory too soon, and we paid the price for that. And we will not repeat that mistake. The good news is that with Next Generation EU, we will both invest in short-term recovery and in the long-term prosperity. We will address structural issues in our economy, from labour market reforms in Spain to pension reforms in Slovenia or to tax reforms in Austria, for example. In an unprecedented manner, we will invest in 5G and fibre. But equally important is the investment in digital skills. This is such an important topic. This task needs leaders' attention, and it needs a structured dialogue at top level. We really have to emphasize that and put a strong focus on it. Our response provides a clear direction to market and investors alike. But as we look ahead, we also need to reflect on how the crisis has affected the shape of our economy, from increased debts to uneven impact on different sectors or new ways of working. And to do that, the Commission will relaunch the discussion on the economic governance review in the coming weeks. The aim is to build a consensus on the way forward well ahead of 2023. Honourable members, we will soon celebrate 30 years of single market. For 30 years, it has been the great enabler of progress and prosperity in Europe. At the outset of the pandemic, we had to defend it against the pressures of erosion and fragmentation. For our recovery, the single market is the driver of good jobs and competitiveness. And that is particularly important in the digital single market. We have made ambitious proposals in the last year, for example, to contain the gatekeeper power of the major platforms, to underpin their democratic responsibilities of those platforms, to foster innovation, to channel the power of artificial intelligence. Digital is the make or break issue. And member states also share that view. For example, if you look at the digital spending in Next Generation EU, and you know we have a 20% target, we will even overshoot that 20% target. That is good. That reflects the importance of investing in our European tech sovereignty. But allow me to focus on semiconductors for a moment, these tiny chips that make everything work, from smartphones to electric scooters, from trains to entire smart factories. There is no digital without those chips. And while we speak, whole production lines are already working at reduced speed, despite growing demand, because of a shortage of semiconductors. And while global demand has exploded, Europe's share across the entire value chain, from the design or manufacturing capacities, has shrunk. We depend right now on state-of-the-art chips manufactured by Asia. So this is not just a matter of our competitiveness. This is also a matter of tech sovereignty. So let's put all our forces in it to improve this situation. we will present a new European Chips Act. We need to link together our world-class research, design and testing capacities. We need to coordinate the European level and the national investment along the value chain. And the aim is to jointly create a state-of-the-art European chip ecosystem, including production, that ensures our security of supply and will develop new markets for groundbreaking European tech. And yes, I know this is a daunting task, without any question. It's a big, big goal that I put out there. And I know there are some now that claim it cannot be done. But they have said the same 20 years ago about Galileo. And now look where we are. We got our act together. Today, Europe's satellite provides the navigation system for more than 2 billion smartphones worldwide. So, we did it once. We are world leaders in Galileo now. Let's be bold again, and let's focus all our forces on the semiconductors, and let's go and be a world leader again. This should be our aim. Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, la pandémie a laissé de profondes cicatrices, impactant énormément notre économie sociale de marché. Soir après soir, nous étions tous là, à nos fenêtres, devant nos portes, pour applaudir les travailleurs de première ligne. Nous avons tous senti combien nous dépendions de ces travailleurs, de celles et ceux qui se dévouent pour un salaire inférieur, moins de protection, moins de sécurité. Les applaudissements se sont peut-être estompés, mais la force de nos émotions doit perdurer. Et c'est pourquoi la mise en œuvre du socle européen des droits sociaux est si importante. Il s'agit d'emplois décents, de conditions de travail justes, de soins de santé meilleurs et d'un bon équilibre de vie. Si la pandémie nous a appris une chose, c'est bien la valeur du temps, et qu'il n'y a point de temps aussi précieux que le temps consacré à nos proches. C'est ainsi que nous proposerons une nouvelle stratégie européenne de soins, afin que chaque homme et chaque femme puissent bénéficier des meilleurs soins possibles et trouver le meilleur équilibre de vie. Mais, mesdames et messieurs, l'équité sociale n'est pas seulement une question de temps. Elle est également une question d'équité fiscale. Dans notre économie sociale de marché, il est bon que les entreprises réalisent des profits. Mais si elles réalisent des profits, c'est bien grâce à la qualité de nos infrastructures, de notre sécurité sociale, de nos systèmes éducatifs. Alors, c'est la moindre des choses qu'elles payent leur juste contribution. Et c'est pourquoi nous continuerons à lutter contre l'évasion et la fraude fiscale. Nous proposerons un projet de loi ciblant les profits dissimulés derrière des sociétés écrans. Et nous mettrons tout en œuvre pour sceller l'accord mondial historique sur le taux minimal d'impôt sur les sociétés. Payer un juste montant d'impôt n'est pas seulement une question de finances publiques, mais surtout une simple question d'équité. Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, nous avons tous profité des fondements de notre économie européenne sociale de marché. Et nous devons faire en sorte que la prochaine génération puisse construire leur avenir. Nous sommes en présence d'une jeune génération hautement éduquée, extrêmement talentueuse et fortement motivée, d'une génération qui a tellement sacrifié pour préserver la sécurité des autres. La jeunesse, c'est normalement le moment de la découverte, on fait de nouvelles expériences, on trouve les amis de vie, on découvre son propre chemin. Mais qu'est-ce qu'on a demandé aux jeunes aujourd'hui? De garder les distances sociales, de rester confinés et de faire l'école à la maison pendant plus d'1 an. Et c'est ainsi que tout ce que nous faisons, du pacte vert à Next Generation EU, vise à protéger leur avenir. C'est aussi pourquoi Next Generation EU doit être financé par des nouvelles ressources propres sur lesquelles nous travaillons. Mais nous devons également veiller à ne pas créer de nouvelles failles, parce que l'Europe a besoin de toute sa jeunesse. Nous devons encourager ceux qui tombent entre les mailles du filet, ceux qui n'ont pas d'emploi, ceux qui ne suivent ni enseignement ni formation. Pour eux, nous allons offrir un nouveau programme, ALMA. ALMA offrira à ces jeunes la possibilité d'une expérience professionnelle temporaire dans un autre État membre. Parce qu'ils méritent eux aussi de vivre une expérience comme Erasmus, pour acquérir des compétences, pour créer des liens et se forger leur propre identité européenne. Mais si nous voulons façonner notre union à leur image, les jeunes doivent pouvoir façonner l'avenir de l'Europe. Une union doit avoir une âme et une vision qui leur parlent. Comme Jacques Delors le demandait, et je cite, « Comment fera-t-on l'Europe si les jeunes ne voient pas en elle un projet collectif, une représentation de leur propre avenir ?» Et c'est pourquoi nous proposerons de faire 2022 l'année de la jeunesse européenne. Faisons une année consacrée à valoriser les jeunes qui ont tant consacré aux autres. Et les jeunes doivent mener les débats de la conférence sur l'avenir de l'Europe. C'est leur avenir et ça doit être leur conférence. Et, comme nous l'avons dit au début du mandat, la Commission sera disposée à donner suite aux points qui seront décidés par la conférence. Honourable members, this is a generation with a conscience. They are pushing us to go further and faster to tackle the climate crisis. And the events of the summer only served to explain why. We saw floods in Belgium and Germany, and wildfires burning from Greece to the hills in France. And if we don't believe our own eyes, we only have to follow the science. The United Nations recently published an IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is the authority on the science of climate change. The report leaves no doubt. Climate change is only man-made. But since it is man-made, we can do something about it. As I heard it say, it's warming, it's us. We're sure it's bad, but we can fix it. And change is already happening. More electric vehicles than diesel cars were registered in Germany in the first half of this year. Poland is now the EU's largest exporter of batteries and electric buses. Or take the new European Bauhaus that led to an explosion of creativity of architects, designers, engineers across our union. And if the European Green Deal has a soul, then it is the new European Bauhaus. So clearly something is on the move. And this is what the European Green Deal is all about. In my speech last year, I announced our target of at least 55% emission reduction by 2030. Since then, we have together turned our climate goals into legal obligations. And we are the first major economy to present comprehensive legislation in order to get it done. You've seen the complexity of the detail, but the goal is simple. We will put a price on pollution. We will clean the energy we use. We will have smarter cars and cleaner airplanes, and we will make sure that higher climate ambition comes with more social ambition, because this must be a fair green transition. And this is why we proposed the new Social Climate Fund to tackle the energy poverty that already 34 million Europeans suffer from. So I count on both Parliament and Member States to keep the package and to keep the ambition together. When it comes to climate change and the nature crisis, Europe can do a lot, and it will support others. I am proud to announce today that the European Union will double its external funding for biodiversity, in particular for the most vulnerable countries. But Europe cannot do it alone. The COP26 in Glasgow will be a moment of truth for the global community. Major economies, from the US to Japan, have set ambitions for climate neutrality in 2050 or shortly after. That's good. But they need now to be backed up by concrete plans in time for Glasgow, because current commitments for 2030 will not keep global warming at 1.5 Celsius within reach. Every country has a responsibility. The goals that President Xi has set out for China are encouraging, but we call for that same leadership on setting out how China will get there. The world would be relieved if they showed they could peak emissions by mid-decade and move away from coal at home and abroad. But while every country has a responsibility, major economies like us do have a special duty to the least developed and the most vulnerable countries. The so-called climate finance is essential for them, both for mitigation and adaptation. In Mexico and in Paris, the major economies committed to provide $100 billion a year until 2025 to the least developed and most vulnerable countries. We deliver on our commitments. Team Europe contributes $25 billion a year, but others still leave a gaping hole towards reaching the global target. So closing that gap will increase the chance of success in Glasgow. My message today is that Europe is ready to do more. We will now propose an additional €4 billion for climate finance until 2027. But we expect the United States and our partners to step up too. This is vital, because closing the climate finance gap together, the US and the European Union, would be such a strong signal for global climate leadership, and it is time to deliver now. We have no time to wait anymore. Honourable members, this climate and economic leadership is central to Europe's global and security objectives. It also reflects a wider shift in world affairs at a time of transition towards a new international order. We are entering a new era of hyper-competitiveness, an era in which some stop at nothing to gain influence, from vaccine promises to high-interest loans, from missiles to misinformation. An era of regional rivalries and major powers refocusing their attention towards each other. Recent events in Afghanistan are not the cause of this change, but they are a symptom of it. And first and foremost, I want to be clear. We stand by the Afghan people. We stand by the Afghan people, the women and children, prosecutors, journalists and human rights defenders. I think in particular of women judges who are now in hiding from the men they jailed. They have been put at risk for their contribution to justice and the rule of law. We must support them, and we will coordinate all efforts with member states to bring them to safety. And we must continue supporting all Afghans in the country and in neighboring countries. We must do everything to avert the real risk that is out there of a major famine and a humanitarian disaster. And we will do our part. We will increase again humanitarian aid for Afghanistan by €100 million. This will be part of a new, wider Afghan support package that we will present in the next weeks to combine all our efforts. Honourable members, witnessing events unfold in Afghanistan was profoundly painful for the families and friends of fallen servicemen and servicewomen. We bow to the sacrifice of those soldiers, diplomats and aid workers who laid down their lives for our common cause. To make sure that their service will never be in vain, we have to reflect on how this mission could end so abruptly. They are deeply troubling questions that allies will have to tackle within NATO. But there is simply no security and defence issue where less cooperation is the answer. So we need to invest in our joint partnership and draw on each side's unique strength. And this is why we are working with Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg on a new EU-NATO joint declaration to be presented before the end of the year. But this is only one part of the equation. Europe can and clearly should be able and willing to do more on its own. But if we are to do more, we first need to explain why. I see three broad categories. First, we need to provide stability in our neighbourhood and across different regions. We are connected to the world by narrow straits, stormy seas, and vast land borders. And because of that geography, Europe knows better than anyone else that if you don't deal in time with the crisis abroad, this crisis will come to you. Secondly, the nature of the threats we face is evolving rapidly, from hybrid to cyber attacks to the growing arms race in space. We see that disruptive technology has been the great equalizer in the way power can be used today by rogue states and non-state groups. You no longer need an army or missile to cause mass damage. You can paralyze industrial plants, city administrations and hospitals. All you need is your laptop. You can disrupt entire elections with a smartphone and an internet connection. And the third reason is that our European Union is a unique security provider. There will be missions where NATO or the United Nations will not be present, but where Europe should be. On the ground, our soldiers work side by side with police officers, lawyers and doctors, with humanitarian workers and human rights defenders, with teachers and engineers. We can combine military and civilian alongside with diplomatic and development. And we have a long history in building and protecting peace. The good news is that over the past years we have started to develop kind of a European defence ecosystem. But what we need now is the European Defence Union. In the last weeks, there have been many discussions on expeditionary forces, on what type and how many we need, battle groups and EU entry forces. This is no doubt part of the debate, and I think it will be part of the solution. But the more fundamental issue is why this has not worked in the past. You can have the most advanced forces in the world, but if you're never prepared to use them, of what use are they? What has held us back until now is not just a shortfall of capacity, it is the lack of political will. And if we develop this political will, there's a lot that we can do at EU level. Allow me to give you 3 concrete examples. First, we need to build a foundation for collective decision-making, and this is what I call situational awareness. We fall short if member states active in the same reason do not share their information at the EU level. It is vital that we improve intelligence cooperation. But this is not just about intelligence in the narrow sense. It is bringing together the knowledge from all services and all sources, from space to police trainers, from open source to development agencies. The European Union could have a unique scope and depth of knowledge. It's out there. But we can only use that information and make decisions if we have the full picture. And this is currently not the case, but it is fragmented. And this is why the European Union could consider its own joint situational awareness centre to fuse all of these different pieces of information and to be better prepared, to be fully informed, and thus to be able to decide. Secondly, we need to improve interoperability. This is why we're already investing in common European platforms, from fighter jets to drones and cybers. You know that. But we have to keep thinking of new ways to use all the possible synergies. One example could be to consider waiving value-added tax, the VAT, when buying defense equipment developed and produced in Europe. This would not only increase our interoperability, but it would also decrease our dependencies of today. And the third point is, we cannot talk about defense without talking about cyber. If everything is connected, everything can be hacked. And given that resources are scarce, we have to bundle our forces. And we should not just be satisfied to address the cyber threat, but also strive to become a leader in cybersecurity. It should be here in Europe where cyber defense tools are developed. And this is why we need a European cyber defense policy, including legislation on common standards under a new European Cyber Resilience Act. So, we can do a lot at EU level. But member states need to do more too. And this starts with a common assessment of the threats we face and a common approach to dealing with them. The upcoming strategic compass is the key process to this discussion. And we need to decide how we can use all the possibilities that are already in the treaty. And this is why, under the French presidency, President Macron and I will convene a summit on European defence. Honourable members, it is time for Europe to step up to the next level. In a more contested world, protecting our interests is not only about defending ourselves. It is also about forging strong and reliable partnerships. This is not a luxury. It is essential for our future stability, security, and prosperity. And this work starts by deepening our partnership with our closest allies. With the United States, we will develop our new agenda for global change, from the new Tech and Technology Council to health security and sustainability. The European Union and the United States will always be stronger together. And of course, the same goes for our neighbours in the Western Balkans. Before the end of the month, I will travel to the region to send a strong signal of our commitment to the accession process. We owe it to all those young people who believe in a future in Europe. And this is why we're ramping up our support through our new investment and economic plan with around a third of the region's GDP. Because, honourable members, investment in the future of the Western Balkans is an investment in the future of the European Union. And we will also continue investing in our partnership in our neighbourhood, from stepping up our engagement in the Eastern Partnership to implementing the new agenda of the Mediterranean and continuing to work on the different aspects of our relationship to Turkey. Honourable members, if Europe is to become a more global player, it also needs to focus on the next generation of partnerships. In this spirit, today's new EU Indo-Pacific strategy is a milestone. It reflects the growing importance of the region to our prosperity and our security, but it also reflects the fact that autocratic regimes use it to try to expand their influence. Europe needs to be more active and to be more present in the region. So, we will work together to deepen trade links, strengthen global supply chains, and develop new investment projects on the green and digital technologies. This is a template for how Europe can redesign its model to connect the world. We're pretty good at financing roads, but it does not make any sense for Europe if we build a perfect road between a copper that is Chinese copper mine that is Chinese-owned and a harbour that is Chinese-owned. So we have to get smarter when it comes to these kind of investment. And this is why we will soon present our new connectivity strategy called Global Gateway. We will build global gateway partnerships with countries around the world. We want investment in quality infrastructure, connecting people, goods and services around the world. We will take a values-based approach, offering transparency and good governance to our partners. We want to create links and not dependencies. And we know that this can work. Since the summer, the new underwater fibre optic cable has connected Brazil to Portugal. We will invest with Africa to create a market for green hydrogen that connects the two shores of the Mediterranean. We need a team global approach to make Global Gateway happen. We will connect institutions and investment banks and business community, and we will make this a priority for regional summits, starting with the next EU-Africa summit in February. We want to turn Global Gateway into a trusted brand around the world. And let me be very clear about one more point. Doing business around the world is good. Global trade around the world, that is good and necessary. But this can never, ever be done at the expense of people's dignity and freedom. Today, there are around 25 million people out there who are threatened or coerced into forced labour. We can never accept that they are forced to make products and that these products then end up for sale here in shops in Europe. So we will propose a ban on products on our market that have been made by forced labour, because human rights are not for sale at any price. And, honourable members, human beings are not bargaining chips. Look at what happened at our borders with Belarus. The regime in Minsk has instrumentalised human beings. They have put people on planes and literally pushed them towards Europe's border. This can never be tolerated. And the quick European reaction shows that. And rest assured, We will continue to stand together with Lithuania, Latvia and Poland, and let's call it what it is. It is a hybrid attack to destabilize Europe. We'll never tolerate that. These are not isolated events. We saw similar incidents at other borders, and we can expect to see it again. And this is why, as part of our work on Schengen, we will set out new ways to respond to such aggression and ensure unity in protecting our external borders. But as long as we do not find common ground on how to manage migration, our opponents will continue to target this. Meanwhile, human traffickers continue to exploit people through deadly routes across the Mediterranean. And these events show us that every country has a stake in building a European migration system. The new Pact on Migration and Asylum gives us everything we need to manage the different types of situations we face. All the elements are there. This is a balanced and humane system that works for all member states in all circumstances. We know that we can find common ground. But in the years since the Commission presented the Pact, progress has been painfully slow. And I think this is the moment now for European migration management policy. So I urge this House and the Member States to speed up the process. This ultimately comes down to a question of trust. Trust between Member States, trust for Europeans that migration can be managed, trust that Europe will always live up to its enduring duty to the most vulnerable and most in need. I know that there are many strongly held views on migration in Europe, but I believe the common ground is not so far away. Because if you ask most Europeans, they would agree that we should act to curb irregular migration, but they would also agree that we have to act to provide a refuge to those forced to flee. They would agree that we should return those who have no right to stay, but they would also agree that we should welcome those who come here legally and make such a vital contribution to our society and our economies. And we should all agree that the topic of migration should never be used to divide us. I am convinced that there is a way that Europe can build trust amongst us when it comes to migration. Meine Damen und Herren Abgeordnete, Gesellschaften, die auf Demokratie und gemeinsame Werte bauen, stehen auf einem stabilen Fundament. Sie trauen dem Menschen etwas zu. Und so entwickeln sich neue Ideen, so entsteht Veränderung, so überwinden wir Unrecht. Das Vertrauen auf genau diese gemeinsamen Werte, das führte unsere Gründerväter und Gründermütter zusammen nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg. Und es sind genau die gleichen Werte, die die Freiheitskämpfer einten, die vor nun mehr als 30 Jahren den eisernen Vorhang niederrissen. Sie wollten Demokratie. Sie wollten ihre Regierung frei wählen. Sie wollten den Rechtsstaat. Vor Gericht sollen alle gleich sein. Sie wollten der Bespitzelung und staatlicher Spionage ein Ende setzen und die Korruption bekämpfen. Sie wollten die Freiheit, anders zu sein als die Mehrheit. Oder wie es der ehemalige tschechische Präsident Václav Havel so wunderbar auf den Punkt gebracht hat, sie wollten, und ich zitiere, alle diese großartigen europäischen Werte. Es sind diese Werte, die dem kulturellen, religiösen und humanistischen Erbe Europas entstammen. Sie sind Teil unserer Seele, Teil dessen, was uns heute ausmacht. Und diese Werte sind nun in unseren europäischen Verträgen verankert. Und wir haben uns alle dazu verpflichtet, sie einzuhalten, als wir als freie und souveräne Staaten Teil dieser Union wurden. Wir sind entschlossen, diese Werte zu verteidigen. Und wir werden in dieser Entschlossenheit niemals nachlassen. Unsere Werte sind durch unsere Rechtsordnung garantiert und die Urteile des Europäischen Gerichtshofs sichern sie. Und diese Urteile sind bindend. Und wir achten darauf, dass sie eingehalten werden. Und zwar in jedem Mitgliedstaat unserer Union. Denn der Schutz der Rechtsstaatlichkeit ist nicht nur ein Ziel, er ist auch harte Arbeit und ein tägliches Ringen um Verbesserung. Unsere Berichte zur Rechtsstaatlichkeit sind durch die Reformen ein Teil dieses Prozesses. Ein positives Beispiel dafür sind jetzt die Justizreformen in Malta oder die Korruptionsuntersuchungen in der Slowakei. Und ab 2022 werden diese Berichte zur Rechtsstaatlichkeit zusätzlich konkrete Empfehlungen an die Mitgliedstaaten enthalten. Trotzdem gibt es in einigen Mitgliedstaaten besorgniserregende Entwicklungen. Und hier ist mir eines wichtig. Am Anfang steht immer der Dialog. Aber der Dialog ist kein Selbstzweck. Er muss auch zu einem Ziel führen. Und deshalb verfolgen wir den dualen Ansatz aus Dialog und entschlossenem Handeln. Und genau das haben wir letzte Woche getan. Und das werden wir auch weiterhin tun. Denn das Recht auf eine unabhängige Justiz, das Recht vor dem Gesetz gleich behandelt zu werden, auf diese Rechte müssen sich Menschen verlassen können. Und zwar überall in Europa und unabhängig davon, ob sie einer Mehrheit angehören oder einer Minderheit angehören. Das ist die Seele unseres Europas und die müssen wir verteidigen. Und, meine Damen und Herren Abgeordnete, der europäische Haushalt ist die in Zahlen gegossene Zukunft unserer Union. Und deshalb muss auch er geschützt werden. Wir müssen dafür sorgen, dass jeder Euro und jeder Cent seinem Zweck zugutekommt und nach rechtsstaatlichen Grundsätzen ausgegeben wird. Investitionen, die unseren Kindern in Zukunft zugutekommen werden, dürfen nicht in finsteren Kanälen verschwinden. Korruption bedeutet nicht nur der Diebstahl am Steuerzahler. Korruption bedeutet nicht nur, dass Investoren abgeschreckt werden. Korruption führt dazu, dass großes Geld sich große und kleine Gefälligkeiten kaufen kann und dass die Mächtigen demokratische Regeln aushebeln können. Und wenn es um den Schutz unseres Budgets geht, werden wir jeden Fall verfolgen, mit allem, was in unserer Macht steht, und in Kürze damit beginnen. Meine Damen und Herren Abgeordnete, wenn wir unsere Werte verteidigen, dann verteidigen wir auch die Freiheit. Die Freiheit zu sein, wer man ist. Die Freiheit zu sagen, was einem durch den Kopf geht. Die Freiheit zu lieben, wen man will. Freiheit bedeutet aber auch die Freiheit von Angst. Während der Pandemie wurden zu viele Frauen dieser Freiheit beraubt. Es muss eine besonders schreckliche Zeit für diejenigen gewesen sein, die sich nirgendwo verstecken konnten, die nirgendwo vor ihren Peinigern fliehen konnten. Wir müssen Licht in dieses Dunkel bringen. Wir müssen Wege aus dem Schmerz aufzeigen. Ihre Peiniger müssen vor Gericht gestellt werden. Und diese Frauen müssen wieder frei und selbstbestimmt leben können. Wir werden deshalb bis Ende des Jahres ein Gesetz zur Bekämpfung von Gewalt gegen Frauen auf den Weg bringen. Es geht um wirksame Strafverfolgung, um Prävention und Schutz, online wie offline. Es geht um die Würde jeder Einzelnen und es geht um Gerechtigkeit. Und auch das ist die Seele Europas und dafür werden wir kämpfen. Meine Damen und Herren Abgeordnete, lassen Sie uns zum Schluss auf eine Freiheit blicken, die allen anderen Freiheiten eine Stimme gibt. Und das ist die Medienfreiheit. Journalistinnen und Journalisten werden angegriffen, einfach nur, weil sie ihre Arbeit machen. Einige werden bedroht und verprügelt, andere tragischerweise ermordet. Mitten in unserer Union. möchte ich hier einige Namen nennen. Daphne Caruana Galizia, Jan Kuciak, Peter de Vries. Ihre Geschichten mögen sich in den Details unterscheiden, doch eines ist ihnen gemeinsam. Sie haben für unser Recht auf Information gekämpft und dafür sind sie gestorben. Information ist ein öffentliches Gut. Wir müssen diejenigen schützen, die Transparenz schaffen, die Journalistinnen und Journalisten. Und deshalb haben wir heute eine Empfehlung zum besseren Schutz von Journalistinnen und Journalisten vorgelegt. Und wir müssen denjenigen Einhalt gebieten, die die Medienfreiheit bedrohen. Medienhäuser sind nicht einfach x-beliebige Wirtschaftsunternehmen. Ihre Unabhängigkeit ist essentiell. Und deshalb braucht Europa ein Gesetz, das diese Unabhängigkeit sichert. Und genau ein solches Medienfreiheitsgesetz werden wir im nächsten Jahr vorlegen. Denn wenn wir die Freiheit der Medien verteidigen, dann verteidigen wir auch unsere Demokratie. Honourable members, strengthening Schumann's European idea that I invoked earlier is a continuous work. And we should not hide away from our inconsistencies and imperfections. But imperfect as we might be, our union is both beautifully unique and uniquely beautiful. It is a union where we strengthen our individual liberty through the strength of our community. A union shaped as much by our shared history and values as by our different cultures and perspectives. It is a union with a soul. Trying to find the right words to capture the essence of this feeling is not easy. But it is easier when you borrow them from someone who inspires you. And this is why I have invited a guest of honor to be with us today. Many of you might know her, a gold medalist from Italy who captured my heart this summer. But what you might not know is that only in April she was told her life was in peril. She went through surgery. She fought back. She recovered. And only 119 days after she left the hospital, she won Paralympic gold. Honourable members, please join me in welcoming Bebe Vio. Please stand up. Bebe has overcome so much, so young. Her story is one of rising against all odds, of succeeding thanks to talent, tenacity, and unrelenting positivity. She is the image of her generation, a leader and advocate for the causes she believes in. And she has managed to achieve all of that by living up to her belief that if it seems impossible, then it can be done. Se sembra impossibile, allora si può fare. And this was the spirit of our European founders, and this is the spirit of Europe's next generation. So let's be inspired by Bebe and by all the young people who change our perception of the possible, who show us that you can be what you want to be and that you can achieve whatever you believe in. Honourable members, that is the soul of Europe. That is the future of Europe. Let's make it stronger. Viva l'Europa!
Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. I now invite the speakers on behalf of the political groups, starting with the European People's Party Group, Manfred Weber.
Vice President Metsola, President von der Leyen, Minister Loga, dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, debating the State of the Union means today the first focus on what the pandemic has brought. Not everything went well and smoothly, but all in all, Europe has managed the crisis well. No other continent has developed a vaccine in a better quality. No other continent has a higher vaccination rate. No other continent has shown more solidarity and willingness to help each other, and no other continent has provided other parts of the world with more vaccines than we have. All Europe is proud of our everyday heroes, the doctors and nurses, the researchers and many others, and we thank them for their contribution. The crisis, dear friends, began in China. In Europe, we found the solutions. We can be proud about what Europeans achieved in the past. Dear colleagues, when we look now what is in front of us, then there are two main issues. We are emerging stronger from the crisis, but this crisis has caused and left deep social and economic wounds. Many people fear for their existence, for their jobs. Only if we create jobs, then we can secure our prosperity and we can care about the weakest in our society, and we will defend the European way of life. Alongside the Green Deal, we are thinking as EPP that now is also time for a jobs deal. And in addition to this, after Afghanistan, we really need now a common foreign and defence policy. Joe Biden is clear. The US is no longer a world policeman. But where is Europe? Russia and China are just waiting to fill the vacuum, and that would be fatal for the future. We would wake up in a world in which we and also our children will not want to live. That's based on these 2 points. I want to make very concrete proposals for what do we have to do now. Firstly, the rapid development of a vaccine was only possible because the authorities worked quickly during the approval process. That was the BioNTech founders told us. No blockades, but this speed is what we also need now in other fields of the research sector and in the investments for the climate protection. With an immediate action plan for cutting bureaucracies in the European Union, we should work together with all stakeholders to identify 300 EU regulations that we will abolish or simplify in the next 12 months. Secondly, for the production of an electric car, dear friends, only half the number of employees is needed. Many industrial jobs in the European Union are under threat. New jobs are urgently needed in today's European Union. International trade was and is a job machine. Why not now to pick up this debate with our American friends? Let us negotiate an EU-US trade emergency programme on the mobility sector, on mechanical engineering in the digital economy, as soon as possible as a first step for a more broader comprehensive trade agreement. And only this will be the way to strengthen the Western economy, key industrial sectors, and together we can protect ourselves against China. The European Union and the US together represent 50% of the global economy. Together we can start a growth machine that benefits the whole world. Thirdly, dear friends, the pandemic has shown us how important the health sector is. The coming decade will bring a wave of innovation in medicine. We can beat cancer. I want Europe to create 10 million new jobs in the next 4 years with an immediate innovation offensive in this field. At the beginning of the digitalization 20 years ago, we as Europeans overslept the innovation on internet, and jobs were created in the US and in China. Today, neither the Chinese nor the Americans are ahead with the COVID vaccines, but we are. So let us use our know-how right now. Fourthly, defence. We and I fully welcome the initiatives from Ursula von der Leyen today, and also the decision of the Defence Council in Ljubljana. But what are we waiting for, dear friends? The Lisbon Treaty gives us all options if we want to create a reaction force. So let's do it, and let's do it now. And fifthly, dear friends, global responsibility. Every day, 15,000 children die of hunger worldwide. Every day. The everyday horror. And we hardly speak about it. The weakest suffer most from the COVID crisis. That is why we must reallocate and free up funds, dear friends, like we do it in Afghanistan now, to invest. We need to stop the silent and daily mass death on this world. And finally, dear friends, without law and security, the rest means nothing. That is why we stand for a robust application of the rule of law mechanism inside of the European Union. But that is not enough. Cross-border tax fraud, money laundering, and criminal organizations, mafia, make its way through our societies. And the terrorist threat is still high in Europe. Why don't we finally transform Europol not into a real European FBI? And the European Commission should present in the next 12 months a legislative package to strengthen security in the European Union. Ursula von der Leyen was clear that we can lead the world with the Green Deal. I want to put on the table that we have to have the same ambitions now for new jobs, for our international responsibility and for security. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. Now, for the group of the Socialists and Democrats, Irache Garcia Perez.